So, good morning, everyone. My brother is running the dishwasher right now, so I really can't do my review out, in my study room because, the dishwasher's going to be on in the background. But I want to proudly talk about Kill Bill, the whole bloody affair, and I want to do like a review and analysis. And this is definitely going to be a very lengthy video. And I really want to just say a few things before I start that, I'm actually 38 years old, and Kill Bill came out in 2003 and 2004, the first two films. And I do want to mention that when I was in high school, I remember there was like a news article about it in the school newspaper because somebody reviewed it, and there was like a clip of the animated scene with Oren Ishii, and a lot of people actually thought it was like an anime, and a lot of people were talking about like how like violent and edgy it was, and there were a lot of people, including me, who were not allowed to see that film because, definitely the late 90s, there was still, like, I was born in the 80s. So obviously, you still had, a lot of very strict parenting. You didn't have that gentle parenting that went on nowadays. But a lot of people kind of felt that, oh, well, this is a movie that would drive you insane with how violent it is. And actually, when I remember when I was in college, I watched The Clockwork Orange for the first time. And a lot of people said that about Clockwork Orange. Like sometimes there are those films like, Kill Bill, A Clockwork Orange, Terrifier, Pulp Fiction, where they do a lot of violence and they push the envelope a lot, that there's almost like this mystique about these films. And I think that's important to mention, really. And I would also mention that I watched both Kill Bill films at home because my parents had HBO, and obviously during that time, that was when The Sopranos was wrapping up. So when they were at work, I remember in high school. Um, this is how I fell in love with Tarantino. I remember watching the Chappelle Show, and then he did the Samuel L. Jackson, this is my beer type of thing. Yes, they deserve to die. I hope they burn in hell. And then what happened after that was that I remember some people saying like Pulp Fiction or other things like that because a lot of people were joking about it. And then Samuel Jackson did Snakes on a Plane. I've had it with these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane. And then on top of that, um, then I just started to say, hey, what's Pulp Fiction? I saw it on HBO Max. I had a lot of hours to myself. Then I watched it at home. I was like, man, that's a good ass film. I like that line about redemption and personal pain. And then I started to watch other like Tarantino films, and that's how I kind of fell in love with Tarantino. And I also said too, I really like the emotional journey of his characters. And like when I look at Pulp Fiction, I really see in a story about Samuel Jackson's character being this really like, he survived an impossible situation. He's struggling with his soul to be a better person. And I was that person at that time in high school. I was struggling with my soul. I was struggling with the good deeds and the sins of my life, really, and struggling to be a good person despite good things and miracle things happening in my life. But it brings me to Pulp Fiction. I mean, it brings me to Kill Bill. And I remember when I first watched both those films, I kind of had like, those feelings of like saying this is a very emotionally powerful story. Um, this is a film that really crosses a lot of lines in violence, and it was very innovative. And it was also one of the most influential films of my generation, really, because obviously, Tarantino using anime in certain sequences that has never been done before. And the other part of it is that um, him using like black and white in certain scenes, and even we see Uma Thurman driving to Bill's place, there's like she's in black and white and whatever. Like there's times when it's not just to represent the past, it's to represent other points. Um, for those, there was a lot of young people who did not watch Pulp Fiction, so nonlinear storytelling. And then the other thing that was innovative for was just the music, because a lot of people didn't know about Lady Snowblood and a lot of these Japanese films, and a lot of people didn't know a lot about spaghetti westerns. There was a lot of people at that time that assumed that Tarantino um, just had somebody make all this music when it was actually sampled from stuff from the 70s and the 60s. And it really inspired a lot of people, especially people like me who were getting out of high school, to say when you go to college, do what Tarantino did. Get that bowl of popcorn, get some movies from the 60s and the 70s. When I took art history classes in college, I really studied a lot of old films and stuff like that. Like I remember doing a project about black exploitation films. I remember doing a project about like German expressionism films from the 1920s and 30s, really. And I always remembered like whenever I talked about it and presented that, I was the one who always got the standing ovations, and nobody else got that. It does say something. But really, Kill Bill, in my opinion, is his second greatest pieces of work. I really think everything after Kill Bill was not that good. But the whole Bloody Affair is really the vision of Kill Bill, because he really wanted to do this. It would have been a 4 hour NC-17 film, and obviously in Hollywood they would not allow him to do that. We won't now, and I mentioned this. You look at Heaven's Gate with Michael Cimino. It was supposed to be this great historical epic, and it was also supposed to be this groundbreaking piece of cinematography and art production. But because it was so long of a film, and he was so ambitious with a lot of like directions and other things like that and storytelling, it wasn't that well, really. It doesn't matter if you know the rule of thirds and cinematography and good storytelling and all that great stuff. It doesn't. You can make your masterpiece can fall short, really. You look at Stanley Kubrick's 2001: Space Odyssey, where it struggled at the box office when it first came out, but it took a Clockwork Orange and then a re-release of 2001 to make it profitable. So ultimately, this really ambitious project of Kill Bill, the whole Bloody Affair, it would have not been a 4 hour NC-17 film. It would have not been profitable, and it probably would have destroyed Tarantino's career, really. Like, he was kind of almost saved in a way to not. He was almost saved in a way by making it two separate films, really, because I can see him putting his heart and soul and everything that he knows about filmmaking into this massive project, and then it not being as successful, or not breaking even, or somebody saying it's pretentious or overdone, and then him just going down a downward spiral. And there's a lot of directors who that happens to, where they make these masterpieces, it doesn't get over, and then they go in a downward spiral. And I'm happy that did not happen to Tarantino. I don't think he lives up to his full potential after Kill Bill, but I'm happy he's not one of those directors that, like with Michael Cimino, is a really great example of that, just having a career, making that film that destroys his career, and then never getting back with it. So yeah, I think he was saved in a lot of ways. So, the story of Kill Bill is that what happens is that Beatrix Kiddo is this assassin, and she is part of a group of people called the Deadly Viper Squad. And what happens is that they just go on missions, and everything's good and fine and dandy, and these assassins achieve success in their lives. Like Oren Ishii becomes in charge of the Yakuza and the Japanese underground, and Beatrix Kiddo and Bill, they both have a relationship with each other. They both procreate, have a child with each other, and then Beatrix, just abandons Bill and decides to get married and start a new life. And then Bill finds out that she's actually alive, and then he does a coup de grace on her wedding, and then shoots her in the head, and then she goes in a comatose state. And then what happens is that she wakes up, 4 years later. She gets revenge on all the characters, and then it's kind of really revealed that Bill really wants to see her and meet her again because he really loves her. So there's a lot of situations in the film where she could have been taken out earlier, but he chose to almost give her, a hole in the escape room, really. Like, obviously when she was in bed and in a coma, they could have easily killed her, but I really think that in general, he really loves and cares about her. So I think that ultimately, his heart is the weakness. But there's a lot of stories about, I think the main message of it is really, once you've done something to somebody, it can't be undone, really. So really, your actions always have consequences, or sometimes you don't know what you're creating in other people, um, and ultimately when those things come out, sometimes there are consequences or no consequences for your actions. So I think, like, the story of Kill Bill is very well known. So I definitely think I just want to talk about about my feelings about it. That I think that the first thing that I'll talk about is that the storytelling is very, very strong. And I think this is really important to talk about that. I think that, first of all, that when you watch it as a 4 hour version, there are some strengths and weaknesses. I think it's an emotional roller coaster. I think it's one of those things that really, all the way up until you know, until the second movie starts. Like, I think when you go from Ellie Driver and Bud, Bill's brother, when you kind of get to them and they're talking like this, like, it kind of makes you feel really tired and bored. Like, okay, 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 this kind of is boring me. I don't want to stay into the end, really. Like from that the start of the second film all the way into the fight scene in the trailer. That's kind of like the low point of the film. I think that that's kind of like a little bit unwatchable in a way. Like, when you watch it for 4 hours, that's kind of like the low point. I do understand why it's there, because you can't do something like have nonstop action throughout, because it becomes like an AEW pay per view where it becomes a little too drawn out, really. So I understand like the low point in that, but I also understand like when you watch the whole film, storytelling is very, very strong. Really, you start with a opening where you become fearful of Bill. You see Uma Thurman laying on a pile of glass and on a floor, and she gets shot, and she has like nothing but terror. And they do a great job with sound designs and hearing her off camera and Bill off camera. Like, it really creates a sense of horror. And then you hear really sad music, and then they had the first fight sequence with Vivica A. Fox and Uma Thurman, and then you kind of feel for her character, and then you kind of see the origin story about how she gains her samurai sword. So I think in that you kind of see how she suffers a lot as a character, and it's kind of revealed that when she was in a comatose state, she was her body was prostituted. She was like a sex slave in a comatose state, and also too, she lost her child, really. So you kind of like emotionally feel for her character very, very strongly. And honestly, when you look at everything else that she does in the film, like killing all those people, especially in the first film, that it's almost like, you almost feel very justified, or you feel on her side, really. Like, honestly, she is a tragic villain. So when you watch the whole film, you kind of are like, okay, well, enough is when you kind of want to create really good characters, or characters that you resonate with, or heroes, if they're like tragic villains or whatever, really. Sometimes you have to give them as tragic a backstory, like Vegeta in Dragon Ball Z. Like, he's a murdering bastard, but then you reveal that his planet, everybody loves and care about, were killed by Frieza, and then also you reveal that he was Frieza's slave. He had a very abusive childhood. He went through a lot of things, really. That sometimes, like, the tragedy of his life kind of makes us sympathize for him being like a tragic villain or anti-hero type of character, really. There's a lot of characters like that in fiction. But I would kind of say that really, then when you get to the House of Blue Leaves and the fight sequence, there's one thing that bothered me, is that I didn't like after it, when Sophie gets her other arm cut off. Like, I felt like when Tarantino put that in the film, I said to myself, that was a little too much. That was a little barbaric. That made me hate the bride, because I felt like that was just like, I felt that was excessive. I felt for Sophie, I felt like, for her saying like, fuck you, you stupid blonde. I felt like she didn't do enough bad actions to the bride. She was just present at the wedding, really, that got massacred. She didn't, to me, I didn't feel like she did enough to deserve having both her arms cut off. I felt like that was just um that was controversial to me. I felt on one side you felt like the bride was just, a piece of shit for doing that, but then you also kind of understand the way, it's good because it shows that she's not a good person, really. Like, that she's not a good person. That she's honestly somebody who you pissed off the wrong person, really. But it was good because in a way you're supposed to understand in the end of the day that she is a horrible human being, really. So while charismatic, she's also very, very horrible. So I think that that was necessary to kind of just say, hey, you know what? She's a piece of shit, really. But then the rest of the film happens, and it's actually kind of like, a little unfortunate that this was two films in the beginning, because when you see that her daughter was actually alive, really, it's a really good ending of the first film, because it puts you on a cliffhanger and you want to see how it turns out at the end. But when you watch the whole bloody affair, really, you don't have that same hit in the chest, really. Like I think that if you've never seen Kill Bill before and you watch the whole bloody affair as your first film, I really want to know how you guys feel about her daughter being alive and the emotional impact of that. But I think that honestly, like the ending with Bill is done very well. Really, I think what a lot of people thought was going to be this violent, over the off the wall type of shootout, but it's not like that. It's a conversation, and maybe when Bill gets killed with the five finger palm death technique, the heart destroying technique, it may feel a little anticlimactic, but I think that's the character building and it as a drama and emotions and the music and everything like that. There, there's something about her, that song playing, like when you hear all that stuff, really, it kind of is almost like, I think in a way, like a very violent and crazy off the wall shootout and or sword fight between them. While that would have been fun and cool, I think that not having that's actually kind of better in a way, because I think with Tarantino, he believes in the subversion of expectations, which means you think a movie's going to go one way, goes another way. Marvin getting shot in the face in Pulp Fiction, or like in Kill Bill, you think that this is going to be this violent coup de grace shootout, but then actually Uma Thurman balances, her changing of identity from a killer to a mom, really, and David Carradine's character of ultimately making closure with her and all that stuff, really. So I mean, it's definitely, the characters are very like complex in this film. Like honestly, too, you can write like thousands of pages on this film for how well the characters are done and the complexities and the thoughts behind their choices and the motivations. Like this is definitely a film where it's just like abstract art or an abstract poem, really. Like you can always like write hundreds of things about character analysis and everything like that on it, but the storytelling, the character arcs, and all that stuff is done very, very well. And ultimately, like I said, you really, like, I think through all of this, you kind of really say it's an epic revenge journey. It's a revenge epic. But I also kind of would say that yeah, definitely for a 4.5 hour film, I think when you watch the ending and after like like the well, after the trailer fight starts, you're really back into liking the film or being on the journey road. That's when it kind of really picks up, and that's when you really enjoy it, really. So I think the whole film was watchable up until um, the start of the second film, all the way until when she gets her sword back. Like I think that, like, to me, that's kind of like the low point, but I understand why Tarantino has that, because you have to kind of create like a bit of a pause from all that stuff, really. Um, I think another talking point is I want is like the cinematography. It's a very, very stylized film, and there's a couple of scenes in this film that I want to talk about. I really want to talk about Veronica A. Fox versus Uma Thurman. Like I really like the opening where you kind of see the house and it's kind of like all muted colors. A little bit like they look very desaturated, like the facade of her house, and then also when you look at the colors, they kind of match a little bit of the child's toys in the front yard. So I kind of like all those colors, because honestly, like when you see the blood and everything like that, and later on in the film, there's more saturated colors. It kind of catches you off guard, really. And I really think that they're trying to show Veronica A. Fox's character. Oh well, she's the mom of her child. She's trying to like settle down and get past her past, really. And when you see Uma Thurman come in, and and then you see Uma Thurman's whole story arc where there's a bunch of saturated colors and everything like that, really, and other colors as well that I'll talk about. You kind of are like, okay, you know what? You're seeing this world really differently. So I kind of like how that jarring of innocent child colors, but you're trying to show that Veronica Fox is trying to escape her life with being the mom and being like this mom who does a lot for the community and other kids, and ultimately she can't hide her past, really. So I kind of like the color usage in that. The other thing that I like is the hospital scene, because I really like that in the hospital scene you see like this ugly green color, and I also like when you saw Sophie at the very end when she's in the hospital. You saw like this really just like ugly blue color. And what that really means is that when you have colors, there's something called desaturated colors, where something like dried blood is like kind of like desaturated, and it kind of has like a very like ugly type of look to it. And then it's also in a really really dark area. I'm trying to find something in my room in this room like that has that I can demonstrate that with. But but yeah, like this needle box. Fuck. Like this is not like a perfect red. This is kind of like a desaturated red. But imagine if you made a light with that. It would kind of feel like a little like kind of off really. Like that's kind of like the red of like dried blood or whatever really. But that's kind of like a desaturated color versus like a very saturated color. Like you kind of see the difference, desaturated and saturated red. But the saturated colors just have like a very ugly, unsettling look. Like dead bodies, as somebody who works in the hospital, are very like desaturated and everything like that. So when you had like her in the hospital and she's in like this desaturated, ugly green, or when you saw her in the hospital and there's like desaturated blues, or when Sophie was in the hospital, desaturated blue lighting and everything like that, it kind of it just really stands out. It really says like, okay, you know what? It kind of has like a very horrific look, and the story is definitely disturbing and horrific and over the top and violent and everything like that. So I really felt that was done well. Um, Another scene that I liked in this film was when Bill shows up at the wedding and it's all in black and white. Really, like I like how they did it in an overcast sky. Really, like I honestly felt like honestly, it felt like an Ansel Adams photograph with like how there's a lot of textures in Bill's face and there's a lot of like textures everywhere. But I also kind of like the uses of black and in that because you see David Carradine wearing all black clothing. You see Uma Thurman walking out of the church and there's not a lot of lighting in it, so it almost feels like you're walking from this dark building out into this out into like the Texas scenery, and then part of it is like you hear Bill's music, so it's almost like she's facing darkness really, and then she kind of sees like this guy she had a former relationship with. And the other part of it is that it's very similar to Once Upon a Time in the West, because there is this scene where like you see like these cowboys meeting at a train stop, and then there's also a scene of Once Upon a Time in the West where somebody walks out of a building. So it's definitely like inspired by Sergio Leone, and then also within that black and white, like the show Texas in a very overcast sky. Like when you listen in black and white, it almost feels like you see no cloud in the sky. It feels like there's this overcast, and some people will do that in films to create a sense of trappedness. Like there's this film by the Sadafi brothers called Heaven Can Hardly Wait, and they have a large overcast sky to show, okay, well these are people with their drug issues, but we're showing overcast skies to create a sense of, oh well, you're trapped in this world. Really, people are trapped with their drug addiction, or like in Kill Bill, the overcast sky kind of represents in me that she's trapped to Bill. She's almost trapped in the life of the assassin. She cannot escape him. And then and then also too with him being the snake charmer, and then all the other assassins being named after snakes. There's always a sense that there's just something as a snake trap or a snake pit, or like a person who controls snakes. Usually like a snake charmer or somebody who controls snakes. They may send snakes after to attack people. There's a sense of metaphors, both with the names of the characters. There's a sense of cinematography metaphors saying that this person, that she's kind of trapped in her life really. So I think that the usage of that is done very well in the black and white scenes. I think the next scene that I like is when Bud goes to goes to the strip club, and there's a few things that I like about that. I think first of all, you see like at a sunset really, so there's like this really blue bluish color really, and they say about Buck's character when you really I'm not sure if it's Bud or Buck, but I think it's Bud. Um, Michael Madsen's character. So Michael Madsen's character, when he goes to the strip club, I really like how he got the really sad music because he kind of feels remorse for what he did, and then also they kind of say with his character, he actually is working at a strip club, cleaning up shitty water, putting up with the boss because he wants to punish himself for what he did, or he's an alcoholic because he feels remorse for what happened, really. And he's really like sorry for what he did, but he also understands somebody comes after and tries to kill him. Obviously, he has to respond the way he has to respond. Really, he's not going to pussy out. He's not gonna take it the hard way. But yeah, when you go to the strip club, you kind of see like the sunset. You see like maybe like again a desaturated blue color, and then you go into strip club and you see like all the lights and everything like that. It reminds me of From Dusk Till Dawn. I've never seen the film, but I know it's about a strip club and vampires. So inside, I like the lighting of that a lot. And then I also like, you meet Larry's, Buck, get your fucking ass in here. Very, very funny, really. You saw like, his office and you saw like the shotgun in the corner and everything like that. Like, honestly, like the art production is done very well because it gives you a sense of, okay, this is a dangerous world. Um, I also like the House of Blue Leaves scene. Like honestly, the cinematography of that was done very well. I also like that very famous scene where she's killing a bunch of these guys, and you see like the silhouettes of them, and you see like the silhouettes. You see like a bunch of like squares in the background, and she's like fighting with her sword and everything like that. Like honestly, like that was really cool cinematography and stuff like that. When she's training with Pai Mei, I didn't like that scene because and Tarantino does that. He did that in Django Unchained as well, really, where there's some scenes that look like there's overexposure and with really grainy film, and the colors are washed out, so it kind of feels like it was filmed in the '70s. Like I know Tarantino does that, but sometimes you gotta say to yourself, okay, you know what? It just doesn't make sense really. It just feel it's a little too jarring. Um, And there are some scenes with Uma Thurman, like and like when you watch Kill Bill Volume Two, not the whole bloody affair, like when she's giving like a recap, it's in black and white. So sometimes when you see that, you kind of can almost tolerate black and white being used for both the past, but also when she's in the car, really, almost like she's with her own thoughts, really. So it kind of represents both her inner thoughts and her inner monologue, and it also represents the past as well, really. So that's what I have to say about the cinematography. The editing's done very well. Like I said, I really think it's really sad that this film was not nominated for Oscars. Like it should have won Best Editing, Best. It should have been nominated or won Best Editing. It should have won for Best Sound Design. It could have won an honorary Academy Award for Best Usage of sample music. It could have been Best Director, Best Story. It could have been Best Picture. It could have been Best Actress for Uma Thurman, Best Supporting Actor for David Carradine. Like honestly, this was a film where it could have been nominated for a lot of Oscars, but it didn't because Hollywood does not like these type of grindhouse, over the top violent films. Really, it really wasn't until Inglorious Bastards. I think Inglourious Basterds was really like kind of like the first film Tarantino did where he started to get like 8 or 9 nominations. Like I know like I won't count Pulp Fiction because he did that film. He was nominated a bunch of times, and then after like Inglorious Bastards, like every film after that, Inglorious Bastards, Django Unchained, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, um, those films are kind of like maybe those films kind of get lots of nominations. So he's kind of like in that thing too, where if Tarantino's making a film, he's gonna get 8 or 9 nominations no matter what, really. But before then, it was just Pulp Fiction. But Kill Bill should have been. It really should have been nominated in a bunch of categories, and it's very very unfortunate. Fuck the Oscars for that. Um, but yeah, but there was a lot of strengths to this film. And I do want to talk about some of the differences and how I feel about the differences. That really, with the whole bloody affair, it's really the same film except two films put together. But the first difference is that um, that the story of Oren Ishii, like there's like this scene where there's two animated sequences. There's one where she kills Boss Masumoto, and then there's one where he has an assistant named Pretty Ricky, and there's a fight sequence with him, and I actually felt that the fight sequences with Pretty Ricky was bad for a couple of things. First of all, his name's Pretty Ricky. If I remember, there's a singer called Pretty Richie, so I felt like that was kind of like a little like why is this Japanese guy having an American name? It's just kind of like a little stupid. It does feel like he got Tarantino eyes. They should have just named him something else, like Boss Sukamura or something like that. Like I didn't think that I thought the name Pretty Ricky was a little like stupid. The other part of it was that she does that it shows Oren Ishii's character, Oren Ishii versus him in the elevator, and there's a couple of things about this. That first of all, they have a fight in the elevator, and she cuts him up with a sword a little bit, and then what happens is that she drops grenades in the elevator, and she manages to survive an explosion. After that happens, she manages to be in the elevator shaft and fall like maybe like 100 feet on top to his body and escape all that. So I think when they made the anime sequence, they almost made Oren Ishii's character somebody like Sawa from Kite, or she almost like was like she was almost like maybe a ninja in Naruto in a way where she kind of could go. She can survive explosions. She can also kind of be like going through an elevator shaft and surviving all that stuff. Like she kind of went from maybe with a realistic an assassin in an anime story, the anime story having some level of realism, to an anime story where the realism got taken out of it. Um, so when you see the fight sequence with her and the bride, it's almost like wouldn't you expect Oren's character to be way more challenging, and she really isn't. Like I think Lucy Liu and the bride, like their fight sequence was not that good. Yes, it was good storytelling, but I think Oren Ishii, I kind of expected way more from her. Like you kind of see like Beatrice Kiddo kill like like about 50 people in the House of Blue Leaves, and then and then Oren Ishii as a final boss. Like she kind of just doesn't. It's not good building. Like when you think about Demon Slayer, Infinity Castle, there's a lot of people who have watched the manga, and there's people who have done their own fan versions of Demon Slayer. So when you go through the last three demons, you have Akaza, Doma, Kokoshibo. Like when they tell the story of these three demons, the power scaling is done appropriately. Like you honestly feel like, okay, Akaza third place, Doma second place, way more stronger than Akaza, then Kokoshiba way more stronger. Then they have Muzan, and Muzan takes a lot to take out. Like they crescendo the power levels a lot better. But I really think when you watch the House of Blue Leaves, after you see the origin of Oren Ishii, you expect her to be way more formidable. Expect her to be the final boss of the first movie, but it's really anticlimactic. Like she really doesn't do a lot with in that sword fight that they have to really show that she's formidable, or this is going to take a while to take out. Really, like I really think that they could have set up a lot more. They could have said, "Oh well, she got an injury." Or something like that. There should have been something to say, okay, why does she feel a little nerfed? So I really think that the elevator sequence with Pretty Ricky, the whole fight sequence, it makes Oren Ishii like a mythical type of character, or like, maybe the strongest of them. But really it doesn't it makes her like over the top. Maybe like way further over the top, really, so and it doesn't really, you don't really see a payoff, or really like, okay, if she's so over the top of the scene, why is the fight sequence so anticlimactic? Really, that's how I feel about it. The next part of it is that, and you see the whole fight sequence in color. There's this kid in the that in the House of Blue Leaves, like that she spanks. You see a little bit more of him. And then the last like thing that was a little extended was what happens to Sophie. Like she gets both her arms cut off, and I talked about that earlier, where I felt that was a little bit too brutal for me. Like because like I said, Sophie was just present and disrespectful to Beatrix, and for her to get both her arms cut off for that, maybe for that was kind of like maybe a little too much. But again, it was kind of necessary because you had to show Beatrix's character as a tragic villain, and sometimes you gotta do things where you gotta say, hey, I gotta remind you that this person's still a piece of shit, with all that really. But otherwise, the rest of the film was the same really. But I would kind of say that as a whole film, the whole bloody affair, I would rank it as this. That I think Kill Bill Volume One is the strongest film, and then I would say the whole bloody affair is the second strongest because, like I said, a 4 hour film, where it kind of drags and it gets to a point where I'm like, you know what, I want to go outside and I want to go to concessions or I want to just play on my phone out in the hallway for a little bit, or I even thought about during that sequence, like, oh, I want to go home, or I don't want to sit through all of it really. It kind of dragged really. So I would say it's the second best film. Then I would say Kill Bill Volume 2 is the third best. But like the first film was kind of like to me like an A minus. I think the second film is like an A plus to me. Oh, it's like an A or A plus because it just does a lot. Even though it drags a little bit. No, Kill Bill Volume One's like an A plus to me. Very innovative film. It does a lot. It's very watchable. The whole Bloody Affair is almost like maybe like an A minus in a way because it drags at certain points. And I think like Kill Bill Volume Two is kind of like it kind of falls maybe into like a B plus category. It's still like a legendary film, but it falls more into the B plus type of category, maybe like an A minus if you want to be like kind of like that nice teacher type of thing, really. But that's how I'd rank them. Lad, Kill Bill Volume One is the best film. It's the iconic film. The Whole Bloody Affair is the second best film, and Volume Two by itself is the third best film. But overall, very very good film, and it definitely I think like the last part to talk about is that there are a lot of themes in this, but I think basically the themes are like as I said, when you hurt somebody, you really don't know how that's going to come back and bite you. Once you do something, it's undone, and sometimes when you hurt people, you regret it, and you really really regret it. So always be good to others, and sometimes like with Bill, like Bill puts on a persona of this charmer, of this put together person of polite and really good ethics, but he doesn't really he has regret really, but I don't think he really has a sense of building himself to a better person. And there's a lot of people like that in the world where they'll hurt other people, they may feel sad about it, and they may feel sad about hurting people, but they don't like invest in becoming a better human being. I've met a lot of people like that in my life. And sometimes there's people with certain vices and addictions, or there's things that people just feel really strongly about and they just want to change who they are. And I've been that way too. There's been choices I've made with my life that I should be giving up, and I've hurt many people, but I should be giving up those choices, but I still continue on. But yeah, it's a very very powerful film. It's very well done. I would say it's far superior to Pulp Fiction because I really I really just it was really just an advanced it was really just an advancement of Tarantino's abilities as a filmmaker. So yeah, it's superior to Pulp Fiction. Hope Affair is superior to Pulp Fiction, but still both are very powerful and great films and stuff like that. So I'd recommend it. I think like to anybody watching Kill Bill for the first time, you're really into filmmaking and you really want to take the challenge. I would say don't watch Kill. I would say watch Kill Bill: The Whole Bloody Affair before watching Kill Bill Volume One because that's the original intention. I would say that that's the way to watch it. But if you've already seen them, I would say that, as I said before, if you've seen all the films, if you're around during all the Kill Bill films, Volume One is the best one. The Whole Bloody Affair is the second best, and the third, and Kill Bill Volume Two as itself is the third best. But that's all I gotta say. Very great film. I'm happy to review it, and it was a lot of fun to watch it. And I actually had to watch the film twice, really, because it was that well done, and I wanted to get what I could out of it. I might even watch it one more time when I'm in Chicago next week. But I totally recommend Kill Bill: The Whole Bloody Affair. Very excellent film.